Well, I've always got a dialogue going on in my head. I'm not sure that I want to put that in a book for everybody, but
you called me Sybil a few episodes ago.
That's true. That's true. There's a great quote, and I wish I could remember it exactly. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Joe, Dr. Energy Piazza.
RaRa is in the house. Catherine Asaro Myers.
Welcome back to BU Network Podcast, Conversations Worth Having. On our podcast, you can expect three things. 1, the BU guest moment. 2, the BU moment. And 3, the BU final moment.
As promised, we are giving you a very special audible on each show. Your job, well, not your job, it's to find it. You know the game Where's Waldo? Well, here we will ask you to listen for that audible. Dr. Energy, let's talk about our BU moment and paint the picture for what's happening tonight. Would you like age or beauty to go first? Because that means I go first either way.
I was just going to say, you go first both ways.
And so
you go first.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. So tell
us, paint the picture. Where are you? What's going on? What's happening around you? All that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, I'm in my bridge room, my trusty bridge room, and I am looking outside the window, and for our audience, it's actually evening right now. So whenever you're listening to that, I'm still looking at these pretty lights. And I'm really excited because I put my Fitbit back on. So you know how those things go. You know, they keep you accountable. You track your steps, tells you when to sleep. And when I put it on.
Go to bed now.
Go to bed. It tells me, go to sleep. So I started to really pay attention to that. And I have to tell you, I put it on. I'm a very good student, which makes a very good teacher and leader. You have to be a good student. Otherwise, you can't. If you can't pay attention and follow instructions, you can't give them. So since I put this on, I'm really dedicated to my rest and my sleep, and I'm paying attention to my steps. And I love that because the last couple of days I have not been doing my usual Superwoman routine. So I thought, let me see what else I can do. So it's great. So I'm in my bridge room. I'm wearing my Fitbit. That's got me very accountable. I love that. Love when I'm not making, the mark. I'll get out of bed and walk. I'll say, I just got a few more steps. I remember a couple of months ago I did that. They said, what are you doing? I'm like, I have to get 10,000 steps. Just a couple more. So I do sleep with it. Which
it was keeping you awake, not getting those steps.
And also, I had this whole thing about I was wearing it on my left wrist, and then I thought that's not the right wrist. I put it on the right wrist, so it's not a 10. Does it keep you up? It blinks. Do I get my message? So I have this whole mixed thing about wearing this on my wrist, but I'm doing it. I'm here. I'm accountable. I want to make sure I get really good rest and get my steps in. And I have great energy today. I went for an awesome walk. And I'm really excited about being here with you about tonight and tonight's episode, because it's an episode where we get to be us, but to dream and think big. And I'm really all for that. So I'm cool. I'm right here. Honored to be here with you.
Now, did you mention your dumbbell?
Oh my goodness. I am here with my 10-pound dumbbell. It's extremely important right now. I was actually contemplating making it look like 12.5, but I'll wait a little bit because, one arm 12.5 is a little different than 10. One arm tricep dips.
2.5 pounds difference, actually.
Yes. And then when you're at 0.0, it feels a little bit more than that, right? So I'm thinking about that. But yes, I'm very excited about my 10-pound dumbbell because it is I sent you a picture of that a couple of days ago. Let's add it. If we haven't already done that, let's put that 10 pound. I put it on my dining room table.
Yes, I saw the picture.
I thought
you were like serving it up for dinner or something.
Yeah, well, instead of dinner, a 10-pound dumbbell, that'll help my my Superwoman look. So yes, thank you for mentioning that. And what about you? Tell us about your BU moment.
I'm sitting here in the Bat Cave and all ready to go. I'm feeling pretty casual tonight. Again, like you, I went for a nice walk this afternoon. Beautiful sunny day. This afternoon was actually above 0 temperature, which was kind of nice, but still, for a skier like me, it's like I still want some more snow a little bit. I know people are gonna go, "Oh, no more snow. I've had enough." But I'm a skier, so I'd like to still see a little bit more snow. And I'm just taking it easy tonight. I got my cup of tea here with me, nice cup of ginger tea, and casual, loose, comfortable clothing. I did laundry today as well, right? So you gotta wear the clothes, when you do laundry.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm feeling really relaxed, like you said, energetic. I did some filming a video yesterday with Dr. Tony for the project that we're doing for the office. And so I'm just really enjoying being able to be me, share who I am in several different mediums and several different methods over the last couple of days. So that's where I am at.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's awesome. And our guests get to know a little bit more. Our audience gets to know a little bit more about us each time. Why don't we hop into our episode tonight about BU authors?
All right. I think that would be good. I think we're going to have a little bit of a surprise for everybody. And I think for ourselves probably too. I think we'll have to see what comes out of this.
It will be very organic.
Yes, definitely.
Now, I said organic. In case you weren't paying attention, I said organic.
Yes, there was no S in there.
Right. Okay. Just making sure that you're listening.
Yeah, I was listening, as always. Okay. We'll see you on the other side.
Okay. BU authors. That's amazing. Let's talk about this. Soon to be more than a conversation worth having.
I think that, having, since we started this podcast, we've got to speak with a lot of really amazing guests and feeling really inspired by the guests, and particularly by the authors in this particular season. So tell me how that's inspired you.
Thank you. Well, when you speak to great people and they make things look easy, that usually poses the question, well, I can do that. That's the best compliment you can give someone, right? If you can do it, I can do it. But I don't feel that if they do it, I can do it. I feel that they had so much fun, and everyone has such a different core purpose for writing their books.
Right.
Some of them, and I won't even give it away. People will listen to this season and they'll hear it for themselves.
Right.
So I felt very inspired by the passion that people wrote their books and how some people did that in a month. Right. And some people thought about it for a decade. And some people just, it's amazing how someone can pop a book out like that. But yet the thought, obviously, the seed was planted. So I'm inspired by a few people.
Okay.
I'm really inspired by something that gives me a reason to take action.
Right.
And that's what hits the right button for me. So I won't mention any books because there are so many. The whole podcast would be about me mentioning books. But if the book puts me into action because it talks about an action that I understand and an action that I can put into my own life, then I can understand that that's something I can aspire to be or step into. So, for example, when it comes to fiction, we did not speak to any authors of fiction writing in this particular season.
That's correct.
So that will identify that it's not about fiction. Not that I couldn't relate to it, but that's not what we're doing here.
Right.
What I did like is that there was a life experience, and that life experience caused someone to want to do something to either help others or help themselves or to help people that they don't even know yet.
Right.
There was a philosophy involved, and we have a philosophy. So I can relate to the fact that we have a community, we have a philosophy, we absolutely walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to what we believe in, because we are very passionate about that. I mean, as a joke, we could actually have a book and have it be blank inside, and then so everyone
create your own conversation worth having. Here's the book.
Exactly. Yes. That could be sort of the BU Network notebook.
Right. And we've kind of talked about that in the past too.
We have, and not because we didn't have content, but because everyone could hold on to a BU Network notebook, take their notes, and that could be something that they use for our courses. So I still have that idea. Many years ago, I thought putting my name, I mean, I was younger many years ago, putting my name on the front of a book, that would be amazing. And then I realized you can go to a printer, put your name on a book, and that's that. So, wow, I didn't realize it was that easy. But if we took and I don't like to say but because it negates everything. Right. So if we take everything that we have in terms of our community, our philosophy, our mission, our tag, and we create that as a front and a back and inside and a forward and all of those things in the book, and then we leave a place for people to be themselves so that they could be them, whether it's a day of the week or it's a month, or if it's a season, or we could identify being you with our emotions. I'll give this away. Our first season, where we talk about emotions, could be part of everything that we do. Although we researched 27 emotions and only discussed 12, we could use those 12 as the core for people to say, but wait, there are so many more. And we can say, let us know when you feel joy. Let us know when you feel gratitude. And then they could write in that book. And that could be the basis, book one.
Yeah, it's, it's and I like the idea. Now, I'm a bit of a bookophile. So to actually take a book that I'm reading and actually write in it kind of bugs me. I got to admit. However, if we were to create a book, or somebody create a book, and I know that there's been a couple of people who have done this, we've spoken to, leave actual space for taking notes in sort of the margins. So if it's actually space dedicated for that, that makes a lot more sense instead of having to put, because I'm one of those person who takes a lot of notes when I read a book. And to have to go and find those notes somewhere else separate from the book, whereas if it was in the book, I could just look it up. It's much easier. So that's why sometimes I do actually like my e-reader. Now I still like good old fashioned paperback or hardcover book, but I do use an e-reader as well, because I sometimes like to annotate what I'm reading so I can go back to it later, or I can quote a passage and it's easy for me to look it up rather than having to go through a whole bunch of notes. So that's one of the things that I'd like to see in a book, is space to actually take notes without actually having to write over all the text or scribble up one side and down the other.
Sorry. Yes. And what about the doodlers, people who doodle in a book? So if we give them that space and they're creative and they're artistic, and I was sitting with a really great guy the other day at one of the workshops I was at for Arts Topico, and we were doodling, right? And so I doodle a certain way, and that gives you, like you said, when you're reading the book and you take notes, if you can keep your notes in the book, and then you can create whatever you're creating, and there's space for it, not like a little line or a little paragraph, a place to really, I have a whole book on notes for all the books that I read. I need a blank book for almost every book that I read. It's crazy. I have a whole cabinet full of, and I won't throw them out. They're just great to look at. So that could be the inspiration for how we design it. Does it have lines? Does it not have lines? Could we put the emotions in there? Could we give people a way to be them without telling them? So I absolutely agree with you. You do not like to have Monday at 9:00, this is what we have to do. We don't want it to be an agenda, right? That's way too much structure. That's not who we are. And people can be how they want. Let them write the day and the date and the time. We want to give them the sacred space to do what they want. If they want to trace their hand, so be it. Don't write that day. Just do nothing. Put a sticker in the book or leave it blank. So,
or skip a day and put it go on another day. Yeah, for sure.
So when somebody is extrovert or introvert, right? So you can talk about this a little bit more, because you always talk about this whenever we were in your office, about someone who looks at things externally or someone that looks at things internally. They'll approach that book differently.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So somebody who's, a little bit more externally focused, meaning they look outside themselves more. Basically what they're doing is and an external people who are listening, who are more externally focused, they're gonna go, oh, I know exactly what he's talking about. It's almost as if we have this observer standing over our shoulder or behind us, and it's actually us being that observer, watching ourselves do something.
Right.
Whereas so what we do is we reach out from ourselves and pull information back in. Whereas somebody who tends to be more, and that happens to be myself.
Yes.
Whereas a more internally focused person, what they do is they go inside of themselves to find information, and then they expand their sense of self out to include more of the world as part of themselves. And that's how they connect to the world. So how you would use that book, or how you would use any book, would be different depending on the perspective that you're bringing in the moment. Now, we all need to use both perspective, external and internal. Living only in one or the other isn't a balance. And when I say balance is not 50-50. It could be 90-10, but whatever is natural for each of us. And an external learns has to go outside to then come back inside, whereas an internal focused person goes inside and then expands out to the outside. So we need to do both things in order to be balanced. And interacting with anything in the world, whether it be a book or a podcast or the internet or a computer or another person, is going to be different for each of those perspectives. And the key thing to note here is that somebody who's more externally focused or internally focused, that has nothing to do with being extroverted or introverted. You could be an internally focused extrovert and an externally focused introvert. The introvert extroversion has nothing to do with where your location of focus is.
Right. And thank you so much for that explanation, because as our audience is relating that to who they are and to themselves, imagine having this book in your hand, whether it's hard or soft, or it has a special microfiber on the outside, whatever it has. It could be one of those really semi-hard, soft books with that soft feel, just because I'm thinking about it. And then when you open it up, you could do it like either hold it like a horizontal or hold it vertically, and give people the chance to really be them, because most books have, the binding on the left and then you open it. But what if you gave people the option to hold this book any way they want? So that way they could just mess with their own head, right?
But isn't it funny though, even when we have those options, we often don't take them. Like most people, part of it is our culture and how we, in the Western culture, how we read left to right and like top to bottom, left to right. So we tend to always open our books that way instead of opening it upside down or back to front or something like that.
Well, unless you're reading a Hebrew book.
Well, this is my point, is that depends on the culture. Or if from the Asian culture, they also, Chinese, and I believe it is, they read from right to left as well, from back to front. So
so that's the way the book is opened, because you can't read it any other way, which is something about reading. But it's another thing, and thank you for pointing that out. But it's another thing when you're not necessarily reading it, because it's not going to be full of words, and you give people the opportunity to be either or front to back or back to front, whichever way. That there is no front, there is no back. I understand that there has to be certain things on the book, but we could put the same thing on the front and the same thing on the back and leave it up to them. Like, imagine being you means you choose and you decide, and we don't dictate that.
And this is what I'm saying though, is that even when given those choices, those opportunities, most people will default to their normal habitual way of doing things. A lot of us we move through life in a slightly, I would call it a default mode network, a slightly unaware mode where we just go on autopilot, and we're not actually paying it to robots. We're not actually paying attention to what we're doing on a moment to moment basis. And because we continue to do things the same way all the time, we continue to do things the same way all the time. This is why oftentimes when I'm walking to the office or driving somewhere where I've been before, I will purposely take a different route to where I'm going, so it forces my mind to look at things around me and to see things in a different way. Otherwise, we get locked into a certain perspective and we do things the same way.
We always take a different route. GPS never takes us the same way.
It depends what's happened with your GPS, I suppose, but I like to follow my internal GPS. So,
and that's another reason why we're always going a different way. So the scenic route, thank you for mentioning that, because one of the things I remember doing as a pre-teenager, I specifically remember thinking, why am I only writing with my right hand? And I put a pen in my left hand, and I thought, I'm going to try that. But what I found easier to do was to eat. I taught myself to eat with my left hand. So very often when I'm sitting somewhere, I will pay attention because I prefer to eat with my left hand and write with my right hand. And I had to be 10, like I was young. I remember telling myself, I can do this. And I guess I did. And I still think about it today. And I'll think, let me do that with this hand as opposed to that. And I still make a very conscious effort. My default for writing, of course, is my right hand, but who writes these days except when I'm writing in my book? So because we're using a
computer or texting or whatever.
Keypad of some sort, or we're voicing it. Forget that. We're just we're
voice
speaking
dictating
into our phones, and we just let that run-on sentence go. If I forget to say period, exclamation, or next line, it's like a whole story without a stop. And then I'll usually say, but I'm voicing this. So what I learned to do, taught myself, was to use my left hand, and that's a conscious effort that probably as an adult, if we're in a hurry, we don't want to do that. But I think it would be a great option somewhere in this book. Maybe there's a voice, go here and listen to how to use this book, or go here and, listen to the audio about this book. And it would be an audio book, because the audio book would explain what we're doing with this book. So we would actually get to have a lesson in what do you do with the BU notebook? Like, what is the point of it? Why does somebody want that? Why do you want to turn it around? And why do you want to open it a different way? And why do you want to open it right to left or left to right? And the freedom of, doing what you want in your own notebook, both ways, writing in the front and the back. That's great.
It's great. And it's interesting that you mentioned that about as a child choosing to teach yourself to eat with your left hand. In my family, my brother is I'm right-handed myself. My brother is left-handed. And then it's interesting, both my dad and my sister are right-handed. They write with the right hand and all that kind of stuff. But when we play cards like euchre or something like that, my dad and my sister deal the cards with their left hand instead of the right, which is, so it's some semi-ambidextrous, I guess.
Yes.
And I've done the same thing. I've played with teaching myself to write with my left hand and eat with my left hand, all those types of things that we normally do with your dominant hand. I've taught myself to do with my left hand, and foot-wise as well, because I played soccer as a kid, and most people tend to be right foot dominant, kick the ball with the right. So if you could kick with your left, you could play up in the lineup, because if you wanted to be a striker and you're competing with everybody else who kicks with their right foot and you can't kick with your left, you're not that helpful. But if you can suddenly kick with your left and be accurate with it, all of a sudden you get promoted, because you can play on that side of the field and where other people can't.
Yes. And there's an advantage.
There's an advantage, but it also, again, the neurological and behavioral advantage of it is it creates many more pathways across both sides of the brain for integration and coordination of not only physical movement, but also of how we think with left brain, that whole left brain, right brain division that we tend to talk about in our culture, which the whole idea of left brain does this, right brain does that is very antiquated anyways. But there's still that sort of belief system, or the way that we like to think. And the more connections we can create in our brain, the more adaptable we become in our life.
And see, this is great information, Dr. Energy, for someone to listen to when they pick up a notebook and say, hey, what do I do with this? And you could give certain, you can give certain points. I could give certain points as to this book comes with audio so that you can teach yourself, and then we could give that instruction. Because again, if you are aware of that and someone else isn't, and they just do the same old, they'll get the same results. This book could change their life. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm saying it not because it's that, it's that sentence and that people say, this is going to change your life. But imagine if you change your own life. And the reason why the book changes your life is because you choose to do something different.
Right.
If someone hands me, let's say, an apple or a cut up apple, just because I'm a princess, I will put that cut up apple in my little apple dish in my left hand, meaning I will eat only with my left hand. And I will do that because I want to teach my brain and remind myself that I am equal on both sides, that I can still survive. But if we tell people these things and say, you can do this with yourself, the book, the blank book, so to speak, the notebook becomes the canvas.
Yep.
We go to the store, we go to an art store, and we've done this, we've gone together and you've bought different books that you're going, a sketchbook, and we're going to write in it. And there's a plain book with plain paper and black on the outside. We look at these books for half an hour. Which sketchbook do we want? Do we want it is a plain book, but the intent of the book.
How is it going to work? Does it have spiral round? So can I fold it in half? Does does it have lines versus no lines? And where's and how thick is the paper?
Right. I was just going to say that.
Do I have a special pen that I want to use?
Right. Am I using charcoal and that? Yeah. Exactly. Giving people permission to do as they wish and as they want with that. So when it comes to a book, when it comes to writing a book, to me, when we create our own version of ourselves, we're writing the book in our head. I'm sure we have a vision of ourselves from when we were younger, and probably into the future. We have these visions.
Well, I've always got a dialogue going on in my head. I'm not sure that I want to put that in a book for everybody. But
you called me Sybil a few episodes
ago.
True.
That is true. There's a great quote, and I wish I could remember it exactly and the name of the person who said it, but it was regarding books. She said, and I know it was a woman. She said that the best books should come with a warning on the front saying, "Warning: this could change your life." And I love that. The best books are those ones that just have an impact on your life that you remember for years and years and years. I've probably given away and rebought the same book more times than a lot of people even have books. Like there's just some books that I have that I've given away many times and then gone and rebought it because I wanted to reread it yet again. So that's kind of fun. They make a big impact on you. And some of my favorite are not even, definitely not self-help books. Some of them are like science fiction and fantasy type novels that talk about, that have a philosophy behind them, or sharing a certain perspective on life, or helping me see a different perspective on life. So I'd like to, flip the script on this episode just a little bit and ask you, putting aside for a moment this little book project that we've just been discussing, if you were going to write a book, what topic would you talk about? What would you had a book to share and distill all of your life experience into. Tell me a little bit about that book.
Okay, give me the question again, just a little bit more depth, because I have a few things and I just want to make sure I answer it the way you're looking for.
So basically, you've been approached to write a book about life, the universe, and everything, to borrow a quote from Douglas Adams and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to distill all of your life experience into this book. Let's say, I don't know, 150, 200 pages max.
Mm-hmm.
What would be some of the themes that you would talk about and want to share with people? So, we talk about being you. So how would you be you in this book to help people unlock themselves by reading your book?
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, that in-depth explanation. Well, the question is, would I want to? So when it comes to would I want to, there are things that I know that are locked up in me that I often say, I should write that, put that in a book. And then I think, so what I would do is I would take everything that I've locked up and I would put it in a book. I would unleash completely, 100%, discuss the things that went on, go on, have gone on in my life that would seem amazing yet unbearable, so that I could inspire someone, if possible, either pull or push, inspire or motivate, whatever it does to them, to unleash what it is in themselves. Now, not everything has to be in graphic detail. Do you ever speak to somebody and you're like, this is far too much detail. But a story could be told without specifically hurting anyone else.
Of course.
So there could be a horrific story that I would want to leave names out of, because I wouldn't want them to know how much they hurt me, but I'd want people to know that I was able to live through that and survive it. So I would certainly unleash, and I would go through a period of time. I would decide, would it be from the time of 10 to 60? Would it be I would identify the time in my life, and it would probably, I guess, not an autobiography, but I would need to speak from a point of experience.
Right.
And I'd need to say how authentic it was. It would probably be unbelievable, though, really. I don't even know if anybody could read that. But I would.
I've often thought the same thing. And then some of the books I've read and some of the people that we've talked to, and, we've had some interesting guests on the podcast, but we've had some behind the scenes talks with some people that have been on the podcast and others as well. And when you hear the stories that some people have been through, you're like, how the hell did you even do that? So there's,
Right. Everybody okay. So let me ask you the same. Okay. Let me ask you a slightly different question, if I may, if that's okay with you, unless you want to answer that. And if you do, then go right ahead. Otherwise,
how about I'll reserve my choice till I hear your question.
Okay. Perfect. So if you were going to write a book, so would you write it solo or would you co-write it? That'd be my first question.
I would probably have somebody help me edit. I don't know that I would have them co-write it with me.
Okay, perfect. So you would write it, but and of course you'd have a team of people going through that, right?
Yeah.
I understand. Okay, so you're writing this book. So excuse me, I'm just taking this big deep breath thinking, oh my God, okay, so what's going to happen? So if you were going to write this book, what would you want someone to feel when they read it? Pain, happiness, surprise? What would be the main goal of the emotion?
So my simple answer to that is yes. All those emotions you mentioned and more. One of the biggest things that I find in our culture today, especially in Western culture, is that we live inside a very limited range of emotions. Like when we did the research for the first season with 27 emotions, I bet I would venture to guess or even bet that most people probably don't even experience all 27 of those emotions on any kind of a regular basis in their lives. I would say maybe the 12 that we covered, they would experience more often or be able to identify times when they've experienced that recently. But most people live inside a very limited range of emotion, which limits our experience of life. So that's the first part of that answer.
Yes.
The second part of the answer would be, I would like to be able to, and I heard this, I think it was, so I can't remember if it was Amy Porterfield or Marie Forleo, who said, when you're sharing your story and you're communicating with people, we want to share our scars, not our scabs with people. Now that sounds kind of gross a little bit because, when you see a scab, that's kind of gross. And what it meant to me is that we all want to be able to, and we've all had these conversations with people who share their scabs, and they keep picking at the scab over and over. They keep telling the same story and reliving the same experience, the same story of their feelings or emotions over and over and over again. They've never changed and gotten out of that paradigm. So they're living in their scabs, and they keep telling stories of their scabs. I'm more interested in stories of people's scars. Here's what I went through. Here's what I experienced and felt. Here's what I did to get out of it. And here's where I am now. And if we look at the movies and stories that we read, that we enjoy the most, it always has that element. A person started off in this one particular spot. They were unaware of themselves or what was going on in their life. They had an experience that brought them low, basically tore down their life or ripped their life into shreds. And they felt down in the dumps. They felt depressed. They felt anxious. They didn't know how they were going to get out of it. And then all of a sudden, they slowly started, with the help of either themselves or friends around them, they started to pull themselves out of it. And then they step back into life again, and then now they become a success story. Those are the universal human truths and stories that are the most powerful. So I would love to be able to write a book that could take somebody on that journey.
I can't wait to read it.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. I was right with you there the whole time, just going through that. You're bringing us through that part of your life, or that part of your experience, however long, whatever length that is. And just like you said, it bringing us through it. So then here we have an idea for BU book. We have an idea for our own books. We've shared different strategies on how we would go about writing that, but yet we still come to a common denominator, and that is the reader, the audience, if they're listening to it or they're reading it, will have an experience. We want to give them an experience, whether it's to be themselves or to go through the story or to understand the unleashed truths, and so that they could unleash their own truths and not lock them up and not put all their emotions. It's about feeling the emotion.
Exactly.
And we've nailed it, really. I want to say that in our first season, when we talked about emotions, and I want to applaud really, our intuition for that. And also, if we could include the word cloud, I was going to call it a wordle, but it's not, the word cloud on emotions when I was teaching at that school last week or 2 weeks ago, because that that will give all of those emotions. It's a visual. So rather than go to the podcasts and go and look at them, but by the time you scroll them all, we'll just put all those emotions up there.
We can put it all into one. We can drop it in the show notes for this show.
For this show. And then and then see what we're talking about. And maybe our audience can, do a little test with themselves and say, have I felt these emotions this day, this week, this month? And we won't even have to talk about the 27. We'll just talk about those 12. Because when I used those 12 in the classroom, it was funny how I was with 15-year-olds and they all chose a bunch of different emotions.
Sure.
There was no question. They were really very uninhibited about that. And everyone was chosen. Some they chose more, but still. So like you said, people will look at this and maybe some of them will have not related or could not relate to paranoia or joy or gratitude. But it could be a fun game because everybody likes a game, right? What's the emotion that you have today? Right. So I would like to challenge our audience when you listen to this episode, go into the show notes, maybe you're, however you're listening to it. When we push out the release on this, that we're publishing it, go and look at those emotions and see if you have any of them. And when you have any of those 12 emotions, think about us.
I would like to actually build on that challenge a little bit, both not just for our audience, but for you and I as well.
Sure.
One of my colleagues who practices in Puerto Rico, he does something every day. He basically chooses 3 emotions or 5 emotions. And he practices each emotion, expressing each emotion for about a minute at a time, every day.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So even the ones he's uncomfortable with, especially the ones he's uncomfortable with, or the ones that he would like to experience more of in his life. For example, how many times do we hear people say, I want to experience more love in my life?
Yes.
Well, the way it works is you actually have to give the love away in order to receive it. You have to give more of what it is you'd like to receive. That's how you put the signal out into the universe. You can't just sit back and wait for love to show up. Love is also an action. It's not just a noun. So by practicing those emotions, it expands our ability to receive and be present to those emotions in our life. And that's, what I think one of the best things about some of the best books is they can evoke those emotions in us, and the best movies as well, to bring that out of us.
So I'd like to expand on that by saying this. I'd like to list the 12 emotions, or the emotions, but I'm going to list more than 12 that we had on our first season. So I'm looking at our word cloud.
Sure.
So I'll read the 12 emotions that we have. Gratitude, excitement, boredom, connection, paranoia, anxiety, confusion, passion, confidence, joy, fear, and sadness.
That's 12. Yep. Good job.
So that's what I would like our audience to think about, and go back to our first season, listen to our guests, listen to how we actually spun those emotions into some really fun times, and then think about it. And then think about, if you want to write about it, if you want to wait for our book to come out, okay. If you don't want to wait for it, then think about us now and write down if you experience those emotions. I kind of see it like, oh, I'm experiencing excitement. Great. Let me write that down, or let me circle it. Or since we're going to have this, you could print it probably. If we can make it a PDF, somebody can make it a clickable. I don't know if we want to do that. Click it so that they can actually download that, and they can print that, and they can have this and say, yeah, this is from BU, and this is what season 1 was all about, and these are the emotions that we talked about. Because I have it as this word cloud, and it's in my phone, and I actually look at it. When I talk to people, I talk to them about the emotions that we discussed in season 1,
right?
Because I find it fascinating.
And the fun part too is that when you listen to the authors speak about their books and how they wrote their book and the messages in their books, those emotions that we discussed in the first 12 episodes actually show up. So a lot of authors go through being afraid to put their book out there because they're afraid, people are afraid. What are people going to think of me? Oh, I might say something offensive. Well, the truth is you're not going to please everybody anyway, so get over it. I know I'm saying that lightly, but it's a big fear for a lot of people. And that can also breed anxiety. And then it can create a downward spiral where not only do you feel anxious about it, you feel grief and sadness about it because you can't get your message out to the world. And then all of a sudden you publish the book and you're full of joy and ecstasy and happiness and now you're feeling confident. Whereas when you were writing it, you were feeling unconfident because you weren't sure that you had anything to share with the world. And in fact you do, and those are even those emotions. When we started the idea of this podcast, yes, we just dove in and started doing it, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think of or have some of those feelings about feeling unconfident about, hey, I'm starting a podcast. What the hell do I know about starting a podcast? And I did some research and we started a podcast, and here we are and almost through 2 seasons. And then I was feeling, I'm not sure if people are going to like what I have to say. Well, so what? Here I am. Like it or not, I'm sharing it. If you don't like it, don't listen. If you love it, listen and share it with your friends, right?
And like you said, thank you for that. When the authors are writing their books, because this is in season 2 of our authors. So we're referencing season 1 with those 12 emotions, in season 2. Some of those authors wrote those books with a great amount of confidence, and it is their second edition. Sure. So these emotions they've run the gamut.
Exactly.
And I believe that if you're listening to season 1 and you're listening to season 2 with a purpose, and the purpose is to see if those emotions show up. And then when we go into season 3, and I guess I can tell you there's season 4 and 5 already in the works.
Exactly.
These emotions will pop up again and we'll reference it. And it's not because it was a premeditated, these are the emotions we're going to reference. It's life. They come up. We probably didn't. It was an emotion. So love wasn't one of the choices that we took. It wasn't actually on our list.
No, we took ones that were maybe, some that were more popular and some that were a little less common that people talk about.
So that we could have good shows. Yeah. Right. Exactly. I don't remember love being on that as an emotion. No, it wasn't. So whatever our audience would like to say about this, whatever you'd like to communicate with us, because we'd love for you to go and give us some feedback. We'd love you to go and give us a rating. Go directly to Apple, please.
Show us the love.
Go ahead and give us a 5-star and tell us what you think and tell us how you think about us. We'd love to hear it. Yeah. And so that's an emotion, right? The emotion is the anticipation or the excitement of you doing that for us, and the excitement that if we bring that excitement to you. So I would like to challenge our audience, and I'd like to say it in a nice way. Think about the emotions that you have. If you don't want to use the 12 that we just gave you that we'll put in the show notes, then research your own emotions or research through any method that you want and think about them, be aware of them. If you want to practice them, if you want to deepen your sense of expression by playing with it, by role playing it with a loved one or a friend, we encourage you to be you and to be you on any level that you're ready to step into. And then just think of us as saying, just go a little bit further and see if you could lean into a little bit more. So if your feet are planted firmly, if you could lean to the left or lean to the right without toppling over, and you're leaning into it, then I applaud you. I'm sure Dr. Energy applauds you.
Absolutely.
We both do. And be you and lean into it. Because from this show, what we would like to do is inspire you, is to motivate you. Because I think we could only inspire you. Really, you need to motivate yourself. But however you want to phrase that, if we could give you the thought to go and take that action to be you in another way, then we've done our job.
Right. And I'd just like to finish too with, before we do our final moment, that if you've ever written anything, now when I say anything, I mean like outside of a business report or anything like that. Well, I guess you could include that even too. If you've ever written anything, whether it be for yourself or for somebody else, whether it's published on a blog or in a book or just in a journal to yourself, you're an author. Think about that.
Good point.
And in fact, if you've ever told a story, you're an author. And here's the cool part. You're telling yourself stories all the time in your head. Are they good stories? Are they fun stories? Are they stories of how you'd like your life to be? Or are they stories of how your life is that you don't like? You get to decide. You get to be the author of your own life.
Well, Dr. Energy, I have a question.
Sure.
If I go into the kitchen, does that make me a chef?
Sure.
Okay. So we are.
What are you doing? Well, I guess it depends what you're doing in the kitchen.
Okay. You're actually,
if you're going, you got to go in the kitchen. You actually got to try and cook.
Oh, okay. If I go into the kitchen and cook, then am I a chef? Because I am whatever I tell myself, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. On that note, let's go around the room with all of our personalities and emotions.
Who would like to go first tonight?
Oh, me. Let me. I'll go first. No, let me go first.
No, let me. No, me.
And this is how we roll. Let's talk about what we got out of tonight, our BU final moment, our takeaway.
So I would say let's keep it like we did earlier and have age and beauty go first. So you go first again. Let's be consistent and coherent tonight.
Okay. All right. As an ABC, I'm age and beauty and
consistent.
Consistent. That's you. Okay. What is my BU final moment? My takeaway is it's really amazing for me to speak about creativity. When I can inspire someone to be creative themselves, and I watch them, and I watch someone with sticky notes or with an easel. I love to watch people painting, even though I'm not a great painter. My BU final moment is I listen to you create something. And it took me right there. I jumped into it like there was absolutely nothing else happening. I immersed myself in what you were saying. So in doing that and giving you the space, because it's you and I on this show, it gave me joy to hear you going into the details of that. And I can't wait to see what comes from it.
Cool. I like that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And what about you?
So for me, the takeaway tonight is something that you said right near the end of our, for lack of a better word, interview. When I was talking about being an author, and you said about going into the kitchen and being a chef, and you said basically we are what we tell ourselves. I remember reading a story a long time ago, and the author, I think it was Robert Fulghum, in Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, which is one of my favorite books ever. And he was talking about how kids are basically, if you ask them, are you a singer? Like, yes, well, sing me something. And they start singing. Are you a painter? Are you a drawer? Are you a dancer? Are you whatever? They always say yes, especially at a young age. And they can do it. They don't censor themselves. They just do it. And as adults, we start to believe the talk that we heard, and we stop believing that we can do anything. So when people say, do you sing? I say, yes. I sing in the car, I sing in the shower, and I sing along with the music in my apartment. Do you dance? Of course, I do the same thing. I dance in the car, drumming on the steering wheel or on the dashboard when I'm stopped at a light or in the apartment. You don't have to be a professional dancer. You don't have to be a professional author. You don't have to be a professional anything. You don't have to be a professional chef. If you tell yourself you are those things, you are those things, and you will live into it. So my takeaway is be who you want to be. There was one last great quote or story that I'd like to share, and that's this.
Yes.
The quote was, they told me I could be anything, so I decided to be everything.
That's awesome. On that note, that is amazing. I believe you. And we should say this to ourselves at least once a day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. This has been such an amazing show with you tonight. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your energy.
And thank you. It's very wonderful to share the time with you and with all of our listeners.
Yes, yes. Let's hear and read what our listeners have to say. And I guess we should get working on that book.
Yes, I think we've got a book to start writing.
Let's do it.
Okay. I think we'll hang up and start going right now.
Okay, let's do it tonight.
All right. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you for joining us. Sharing is caring. Tell your friends about conversations worth having on BU Network. We really appreciate your reviews, and you can do that on Apple Podcast. Thank you.
For show notes and links, go to www.b-u.network/podcasts. Connect with us via our website, www.b-u.network.
We're looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you for being with us. Ciao.
Ciao, babies.